I think we're live. We're a minute or two late. So, but hello. If anyone's watching. Oh, no, now I think we're live. But we are a minute or two late. So people might have been watching and waiting. We don't know. Well, welcome. If you are watching, welcome. Hi, Gem.
Hi.
Welcome. FOMO Book Club Live. It's the first. Yes. It feels like ages since our last one. So, I mean, it's going to be just 2 months, right? But it feels like
I think it's just because it's been so busy in the last 2 months for both of us, right? So a lot of content has happened, live content, in the last 2 months.
Live content has gone nuts, yeah. Not so much the booktube content for either of us, to be quite fair.
No.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to chat to some people today and see how they got on with the book. And just catch up with people and how things are going and how people are, what they're doing, what they're reading. You've been having a nice reading time, I think, haven't you? What have you been reading?
Yes. What have I been reading? Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Of course. You're on book 3 now, right?
On book 3. I am like low level addicted to that series. It's just so much fun and there's so much sarcasm in it that really appeals to me at the moment.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're very popular, aren't they? I actually had it on my, when you mentioned you were like, oh, you'll love this. I was like, I've got that. I've had that for ages because it does appeal to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
If people aren't aware of it, it's lit RPG they call it, isn't it? So RPG is role playing game. So lit RPG is literature based on role playing games, isn't it? On like platform gaming or like big world building games like World of Warcraft and that kind of style of thing, isn't it? With quests and what have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that really appeals to me. And I started it. I put it to the side for now though. And it's not because I wasn't enjoying it. I just wasn't in the headspace for it. So when I was like tried to read it a couple of times, picked it up, and my mind just kept wandering. But I think I'm just going to listen to the audiobooks. I think the audiobook's really good, and I have got the audio.
Yeah, it is really well narrated.
Yeah, I've got the audio, and I think it'll be a really great audiobook. So you've just been immersed in that world, and it's been optioned for a TV show, apparently.
Is it?
I think it is being like the rights to it.
It will be hilarious as TV show if they do it well, because obviously it's a lot of like animals and monsters and stuff, so it needs to be like well designed.
It could make like a good anime or something, couldn't it?
But yeah, absolutely loving it. So yeah.
And so your joy reading June went quite joyfully in terms of reading.
Yeah, well, because I haven't really been doing the booktube thing lately. I have no like pressure to like read prize books. I'm just picking up what I fancy, which has been really nice.
Yes, living the dream, living the reading dream, picking up what you fancy. Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to do that for most of June, and then July is the same for me. I've got no commitment. The only commitment I had in June was buddy reading Demon Copperhead with Jolene.
How was that?
I really, really enjoyed. Wasn't 5-star for me. I think the pacing was off at the end for me. Yeah. I thought it was going to be 5-star though. Pretty much for 2/3 of the book, I was like, oh, loving it. And I still really enjoyed the ending, as in like, I was never bored reading it. I was always compelled. I wanted to find out what happened. I really cared about the characters. I love the social commentary, and like I found out a lot about Appalachia, which I didn't realise. Didn't know Barbara Kingsolver was from Appalachia, and that's why she was championing all of that like awareness.
Yeah.
And like I've heard like people who, because it seems to be not a Marmite book. It's not quite a love it or hate it book, but it's either people love it or people are kind of like about it. I wasn't about it, but it's not a 5-star read for me, and it's mainly because I felt like at the end it was suddenly all this stuff. The pacing in the beginning was great, and then at the end just all this stuff happens at the end, like stuff, and I was just like, it's just too much. And then basically, I don't know if that's because it's based on David Copperfield, and I've not read David Copperfield, and how closely is she based it on David Copperfield? I don't know. So maybe she was really, I've no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting because when I saw her talk at the Women's Prize Live, when she was shortlisted for the Women's Prize, she said that she'd always wanted to write a story about Appalachia. But she'd never felt that she was proficient enough until this point in her career. So this is why she's got so many books up until this point. And she sort of said, now is the time that I want to write this book. I think that's really interesting that an author can have like a seed of a book for decades, right? And feel like it's not the right time, and then
it's the book that they know they want to write eventually. And that's it's her magnum opus. Her great work. And also it is the book that's won her the Pulitzer, the Women's Prize. I think that's what it won.
Yeah.
I mean, huge on the prizings. But yeah, so I think she's a brilliant author. I really like Barbara Kingsolver. I love The Poisonwood Bible though. Nothing touches that for me. I think it's a far better book than Demon Copperhead. I think far better. It is a better book for me. Not far better, but it is better. I think I didn't feel at the end of The Poisonwood Bible that there were things I would question or the things that I wanted to, whereas at the end of Demon Copperhead I was like, not sure about certain things, and also some of the character, like some things that it was just too many things. It was like she set up all these things and they were wrapped up too quickly. I could have read more. It could have been spread out a bit more for me, or it could have been just like that pacing was off and too many storylines trying to wrap up, and then a relationship that kind of ended up being the way it was. I was like, not sure about that. But I don't know, like I said, how much it's based on David Copperfield.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
So. And I'm going to read David Copperfield, definitely. But mostly I've been enjoying just random picking up things, library books that have come up, and it's been quite nice. Yeah. Right, let's see who is in the chat. Zach left this earlier, actually, which is straight off that, a controversial comment. Here we go. When I was catch it live, gave it 1 star, found it to be dull and pointless. Controversial opinion. Let's see. Setting it in the past also made it feel even more pointless because it already didn't happen. I'm expecting to give this, it's because I gave Clara and the Sun 5 stars. So we'll get into our thoughts on it soon enough. But this idea of setting it in the past, I think it's an alternate history, an alternate timeline post World War II. So in terms of the way the world has gone. So I think it is set in the past, like our past. It would be like the 80s, I suppose, the 90s, but an alternate past, so an alternate timeline. Really interesting. Okay. Good morning.
Morning, lovely.
I've had to have a coffee though. It does feel like morning because I've had to have a coffee at 4 p.m. because I'm tired. And if I start coughing, it's because I've been up coughing all night. So if I start coughing, you'll have to take over on your own. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Hello, Kirsty. Hello. I'm happy to be here to discuss Never Let It Go. I enjoyed this one very much. I found it a really compelling read. I found it very compelling. Good morning. Everyone saying good morning. Oh, hi, Cheryl. How are you? Hi, everyone. Second book I've read. My first was Remains of the Day, which I read while in college, and now I want to watch the movie. I really want to watch the film. Have you seen the film, Never Let Me Go?
I think I have, but it was a long time ago. One of those films is on a Sunday afternoon, and you kind of catch it a little way in. And is it Keira Knightley?
Keira Knightley and what's her face? Andrew Garfield, and what is her name? Who's in The Great Gatsby?
Carey Mulligan.
Carey Mulligan, yeah, Carey Mulligan. Yeah, she's it's Carey Mulligan and Keira Knightley and Andrew Garfield. And I really do want to watch it because I want to see. I'm always curious about adaptations, and people love the film. So maybe the film, if people didn't enjoy the book so much, maybe the film might work better as a film. You just don't know. Sometimes things do, don't they? And then yes, Carey Mulligan, I can see there. Cheryl said first Kazuo Ishiguro, and I loved it. Definitely reading more of their work. This is my second Ishiguro. It's your second, isn't it, or your first? Your third. Yeah. What ones have you read? You read The Remains of the Day?
Yeah, and The Buried Giant.
And what did you think of those other two? Because I love The Remains of the Day. I kind of feel it's not a Gemma book.
Well, I feel like Ishiguro is not a Gemma author.
I feel like he's not a Gemma author, actually. I feel like if you're not going to like Never Let Me Go, then you're not going to like much of his work, I think. I feel like
it's very slow and introspective and, dare I say, dull. Like,
yeah. I mean, I've not found any of it dull, but
it's not very juicy.
I can see why, for the type of things that interest you as a reader, I can see why you would find his work not as compelling or interesting as, you know, as all that, because he's quite, like you say, he's very introspective, isn't it? It's and it's a lot to do with memory. The Remains of the Day is about memory.
Yes.
Never Let Me Go is about memory. He's got this kind of thing about how people remember things and false memories and whether they're real or not, you know, how people remember things differently from others. And The Remains of the Day was very much about that. And narrators that he has, very interesting narrators. They're kind of very unreliable narrators, I suppose. I mean, definitely in The Remains of the Day is an unreliable narrator, but in Never Let Me Go, I should say, I did have the spoiler warning ticker tape going across the bottom. I've taken it off because we're not doing spoilers right this second. But there will be massive spoilers. And I do think part of the reason, I don't know, I was really annoyed. I got a spoiler for Never Let Me Go about 2 days before picking the book up, which really annoyed me because I've avoided all spoilers for it for years. And I've had it on my Kindle for years, waiting to be read. And I do think it's a book where going into it blind is better. I think in terms of enjoyment levels, I do think that. Because, yeah, for quite a bit of it, I was like, I think I know what's going on. So it was like this kind of slow reveal a little bit. And I was like, but I know now. I know.
Yeah. So I had an inkling that the film that I'd watched was this, but I wasn't entirely sure. It was like 15 years ago. So, you know, when you're like, I sort of have some vague memories, but I'm not sure. So I went in thinking I might know what this is about. And then it became clear that I did know what it was about. But I think because Ishiguro plays with form quite a lot and sort of structure of his novel and like back and forward, and I think it would be a book that I would love to study because I think you could talk quite a lot of it about it in an essay form, and he's doing interesting things. But for me, from an enjoyment level, reading it like just for fun, it didn't scratch the itch. I mean, there were no cats with laser. That's where my brain is at right now. Like, I want like goblin explosions and
yeah, it's not that.
It's not that.
It's not that. I mean, it is the type of dystopian fiction that I really like, this kind of dystopian alternate kind of speculative fiction, I suppose. I really like it. And I think it's a really dark book. And the darkness for me that comes from how matter of fact this is being presented, and about this kind of memory of this time at a boarding school and everything else, and then when what's really going on is just so dark, you know. And I suppose I'm going to put up spoilers because I feel like even when we just do overall thoughts on the book, I think we might spoil it for people. And I do think if you're watching this and you've not read it and you do want to read it, don't let us spoil it for you. Really important, because that really annoyed me. And I can tell you in a minute, I'm going to put spoilers up now, the book that spoiled it for me, and that might, yeah. Okay, I'm putting the spoiler warning up, so you've been warned if you've not read it. The book that spoiled it for me was, I started listening to The Story of a Heart. Which I really want to go back to now that I've read Never Let Me Go, but I was just trying to get to the pause button. No, when I was listening to literally the introduction of The Story of a Heart, which has won the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction this year, and is a very important, very moving book about, I'm just going to say it, it's about organ donation. And straight away, in the opening of that, which I just think, hang on a minute, don't spoil books like that in the opening of your story. She starts talking about the discussion of it in Never Let Me Go. And I was like, brilliant. I'm about 2 days away from starting a book I've been waiting years to read. It's just gone on, and straight away it's mentioned. But yeah, so darkness. But yeah, so if you, I do want to go back to The Story of a Heart now, especially in light of reading this now.
Yes.
But yeah, so Cheryl loved it, and then we had a few more comments, and then we're going to get on to just your general thoughts. I really want to hear your general thoughts on this, Gemma. I'm looking forward to hearing about it. Where are we? We were back here. Oh, Berna's here. Hello, Berna. Hi, Berna. I'd like to read The Remains of the Day now. I think you'll enjoy the film version. Yes, The Remains of the Day, book and film, beautiful. Absolutely love those. Yes, good to know. I think we'll enjoy I think I will enjoy the film as well. I'm going to look for it. Didn't find it dull, but it wasn't a favourite for me. Looking forward to the discussion. I think that's where I am. I don't know if I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that's where I am. It's still a really good book for me, though. I've really enjoyed it, but yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's not morning for us. No, it's not. No. Kerry Mulligan. Yes. I love slow and introspective. I found it compelling. Me too, Kat. I found it very compelling. I wasn't bored reading it at all. Sometimes I didn't like the characters, but that's maybe a strength of the writing. Yeah, are we meant to like them? You know, this is the thing. Are we meant to like the characters? That's an interesting thought. We'll talk about that. I agree. Going in blind was better. It worked for me anyway. Yes, I feel like, and then I think to myself, well, should that affect the quality of the book that I think it is? Having had it spoiled, should it still be a really good book? You know, should I be relying on this reveal of what's going on to make the book elevated for me? Does that actually, you know, is that a really good measure of a book? Like to say that, you know, if it was really, really good, it should work either way, really. I don't know. Is it, you know, if you're relying on a reveal like that, is that a gimmick? to how good the book is, if you know what I mean. Definitely agree, Going in blind better, definitely. Yeah, same, especially Ruth, the character of Ruth. She was really unlikable, the character of Ruth. But I think on reflection of the whole thing, there's a lot to pity in them. And I don't just mean the fact of, you know, what they're made for, but just their lives in general, which we'll get to when we talk about the characters. I adore Remains of the Day. I like this one, but not loved it. Give it 4 stars. Same, I think I'm the same, Berna. The characters are not relatable. And I don't think they're supposed to be. Because I think, oh, hello, there's a Charlie in the house.
Sorry.
Hi, Charlie. So, talking about whether they were, the characters are not relatable. But the characters, I found the characters, they, like if you think about it, I think he's done really well in creating these young characters, these young people who don't know how to be people in the world.
Yeah.
Because they are brought up and they've not got families. They're as close to each other as they're going to be to anybody because no one else has been through what they've been through. They've been brought up together. They don't have parents. They don't have anyone who really cares for them. And as the book goes on, you discover that society doesn't even want them around or want to be reminded that they're there. And so actually, they aren't relatable because they cannot relate to any of us either. They can't relate to being human. And the whole book, like a big part of it is what is it to be human? You know, what is it to be a person? Read Chang'an All Stars prior to Never Let Me Go, both dystopian, preferred Never Let Me Go so much more. Look at Gemma. Gemma's like, loves a bit of Chang'an All Stars.
Complete opposite, Kat. I gave Chang'an All Stars 5 stars.
Yeah, I've yet to read that still. I've yet to read it, but I am going to read it.
But there's it's a lot more plot focused. But it still has a lot of social commentary.
Yeah. Very different books, though. I imagine in structure and style.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
They didn't have any nurturing. Exactly. And, you know, so there were so many themes which actually stick out for me. And I think this is the bit about the book that I think I really like Ishiguro as an author. And I do think, like, that he raises some really thought-provoking themes in his writing and the way that the characters are in his books. The introspection of these characters kind of makes you think about them. I still think about them after the book, so I suppose that's kind of the sign of it being a good book for me, I suppose. All right, so overall thoughts then. I think we've got a rough idea of overall thoughts, Gemma, but like let's get deeper into it. What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Whereabouts are you falling with it?
So I didn't hate it, but I didn't. I could take it or leave it kind of book. It was like, fine, yeah, glad I read it, like tick it off the bucket list. But I just felt it took so long to get to the point. It's so much about their relationships with each other at school and the way the school went, and like dropping these little hints that weren't really hints, and then this whole big like reveal in this one conversation at the end where they went and talked to the teacher. What's her name? The madam.
Madam and Miss Emily, the head teacher.
Yeah, and they just like spew out this whole thing, and it's like there's a level of, well, I think they probably knew a lot of this beforehand, because I mean, were they really that sheltered? But also like this whole like section beforehand where nothing happened, and then it was just like, oh, this is what's happening. Oh, and now like we're going to finish. And it was, I felt like that was Remains of the Day as well. It took so bloody long to get to the point, and then right at the end, it like had a like emotional like uplift. But you have to read like the whole book to get to that, and I was just like,
yeah, I think I suppose it kind of then depends on what you think the point of the book is, in a sense. So if it takes this long to get to the point, but what is it you think the point of the book is? That's the thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
For you, what was the point of the book? You know,
I mean, I think it was looking at the value of life, and obviously the risks of cloning, and like the future of medicine and the future of ethics in medicine. Those were the interesting things for me, and I would have liked more around those ethics and look more about what those characters were feeling while they were going through the donation process.
Yeah, that was very I suppose like very just hinted at, isn't it? You know, but
yeah,
that second section of the book where she's a carer, and it's interesting that they make them care for each other before they.
Yeah, I kind of almost would have liked the book to start with that conversation with the teachers, and then go like a year from that point. So, what were their conversations? I know we had some of that, but look, I wanted more of that and less of the school stuff.
And it's interesting, isn't it? 'Cause like I think the like you were saying, there's those bits that are actually, in some ways, I suppose it's this kind of morbid curiosity we have to know what they're going through, because the thing that they've been created for is so horrific. It's like, well, what's this like? What's going on here? And that seems to be secondary to what they want, which is to have a life outside of that. And they kind of want to be, because they're trying to be, by the end of the book, they want to try and get their donations deferred, don't they, so that they can have a bit longer together, which is heartbreaking, really. And I think the big reveal at the end isn't so much the whole donations thing, it is the Hailsham school itself, isn't it, about what the purpose of that school was.
Because it was different, yeah.
Because everywhere they go, the other clones treat them as, because I should say, obviously a big spoiler, they're all clones, but the other clones treat them as special because they've been in Hailsham.
Pilot program, right? It was almost like a, will it make any difference if we
treat them like people? Yeah, because you just wonder though, what were the other schools like? You see, because to me, it was like, well, if Hailsham is this experiment to give them an upbringing and a childhood before they are then donating their organs to people, which is the only reason they've been born, right? Then they want to prove they have souls, don't they? That's why they make them do art all the time, because they're like, well, only a soul. I mean, this is really interesting in the age of AI to discuss this, right? That only someone with a soul can produce art, and that was the thought behind them making art all the time, being creative. And so the Hailsham experiment was a failure in the sense that the school got shut down. But you just wonder what all these other children, these other donors, were going through in the schools that they were at. If Hailsham was this experimental, you know, let's treat them like it's a boarding school, like they've got a childhood, like they have a future, you know, that kind of thing. And whether that's, and there was a question about whether that's cruel or not, wasn't it?
But again, I think that's an interesting question in itself. I think this is what frustrated me about the book. I think it had a lot of really interesting questions and concepts, but then none of them were explored in a way that I felt satisfied. So if they'd had a real contrast between the Hailsham students and students from another school, like a split PAV or more conversation with those students when they were in the sort of like halfway house thing. But we didn't really get any of that. It was sort of like just mentioned and like move on. It's like,
I also found that those other students didn't seem that different.
no.
So so they didn't seem that different to me. And in fact, because they'd been out of their schools or wherever their homes, wherever they come from, for a year longer, they've been in those cottages a year longer, they were seen to be a bit more experienced. So it's almost like, well, what was the point of Hailsham then if these other donors and clones are,
Fine.
what? They're in the same state, right? So I don't know. So that was an interesting one. For me, I found, and this is why I like it. I think I've only ever read The Remains of the Day, and this is my second Ishiguro. And I found with it, I loved The Remains of the Day. I really loved that book. I reread that, and it made me think for ages. Never Let Me Go. I feel like it was so overhyped. That's why I think it wasn't 5 stars for me. I feel like because just before we'd been reading it, there was that whole list out last year, the New York Times best books of the quarter of the century, right? Yeah. And that was actually, Ishiguro had 2 books, I think The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go, or was it one of these other ones? But Never Let Me Go was his highest rated in that list, both by the authors list, and then they did, the public did a response list, and it was in the same spots, like number 7 or something of those books. So the top 100 books of the century voted for by these authors and then by the general public. I think it's the only book that reached the same position on both lists. And so therefore I was expecting, and people love it, like people are really passionate about this book, like it's they absolutely love it. And I can see I enjoyed it a lot, I got a lot out of it, and I think the thing about his writing is it raises more questions than it answers. But yeah, I don't know, is that a bad thing? I don't know necessarily, but yeah. I
mean, I don't think that's a bad thing per se. You just
want more. more out of it, yeah.
It just felt really unsatisfied. I think that's the best way to put it at the end.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, that makes sense.
So much more meat on the bone that wasn't like I don't know. I just wanted so much more from it. Yeah.
No, that makes complete sense. But yeah, for me, still a very, very good book. I don't know. I think what kept it probably from being a 5-star read for me was I felt like the letdown of it and knowing what was going on from the very beginning, kind of, because I feel like if I'd gone in completely blind and it had been this slow reveal for me, I think I probably would have been far more like, oh, but I knew what was going on, so I was kind of waiting for it to happen. All right, so but still a very good and compelling read for me. I couldn't put it down, to be fair. I read it in a few days, so that's good. Where are we? Chain Gang All Stars. Kat gave it 3.5. Expectation thing. This is the thing, isn't it? We go into these books with these expectations. Is it the book's fault or is it our fault? Who knows with these things? Like, it's the same with Demon Copperhead. I don't know. Maybe I was expecting it to be 5-star, and yeah, sometimes I think overhyping something can have an effect on how we see the book when we read it. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
My friend Alex and I read it for our book club. It made for good discussion. It's a great book club discussion book, actually. So yes, I agree. It's a good book club discussion. It played such a big part in the lives, I think Kirsty's saying, but made more sense with a reread. Did you say big part, or did you mean big part? I think she means big part. More sense with a reread. So is this this was a reread for you, Kirsty, was it? How was it on a reread? Interesting. The second part of the book seemed more instantly meaningful. They were artificial and lacked human qualities. It made me sad they had no choice in the matter of their creation.
Sorry, Jack, I'll be back.
So I'll read through some of these. They were artificial and lacked human qualities. It made me sad they had no choice in the matter of their creation. I mean, yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? Huge topics being raised here about cloning, about humanity, about what it means to be human, and there seems to be a very do you think, this is a good something that pops into my mind? Were they being dehumanized in order for people who created them and for society to not feel bad about the fact that they're just bred for parts, or did they really feel they had no souls? Is that a thing, or was it just sort of people who created them trying to feel better about the choices they were making by saying, well, they're not really human. They're not really human. Let's not think about it. So agreed. It made sense. They were accepting of their fate, being clones, even though they had a subtle yearning for a more normal human existence relationship. I mean, this is the thing. So this idea of them having souls and being human is quite a religious idea, really, isn't it? I think, because they are human in all the senses, the biological senses that they are human. So this whole idea of when they kept going on about souls, but I don't think religion was brought up in the book much at all, apart from this.
No, I also think it's an interesting idea that they link creativity to moral worth, which, I mean, I'd be screwed. I have the creativity of a matchstick. Like,
that's not true. That's not true. Creativity in many different forms. I mean, they were very narrow in their definition of creativity, weren't they?
But very narrow. I don't believe that anyway. Like, so it was an interesting way of testing them with arts.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I suppose it was all different sort of, it was creating art, so it was poetry, writing included in that, like visual arts and stuff like that. But that's a very narrow definition of creativity, really, because there is so much creativity in science and maths and like in so many scopes of like fields of human endeavour. There is creativity everywhere, really, because that like the very act of making anything, whatever it is you're doing, making a YouTube video is a creative act, like, so whether it's again subjective as to whether there are tiers of creativity and what is more creative and what is less. I mean, these are things that are really subjective, but it's interesting. I think this whole idea they talked about all the way through about art and creativity, and then at the end discussing whether they had souls, and that was how they got to it. But then there were no discussions of religion in it.
No.
Interesting, because the idea of a soul, or the idea of humanity, and the idea of a soul is quite a religious idea, I think. I don't know. They had a subtle yearning for normal. I think they had it wasn't subtle. I thought they really wanted to be normal. Like, they really were, like, especially when they were in those cottages. And you remember when they were having the relationships with each other, and Ruth and Tommy got into a relationship, and she would mimic what the other clones were doing in their relationships, because she was like, oh, that's a relationship, and they were doing it from what they saw on the TV. So that's the way people in relationships behave, so that's how I'm going to behave. And I think
that understanding of normal was stunted, though, right? Because they hadn't really experienced normality, so what they perceived as normal wasn't really what was normal. I mean, you never really heard them discuss things like career. I mean, there was a little bit on one of them wanted to be a secretary or something, right?
Yeah, they would have these dream careers. If they weren't actually going to be donors, what would they be doing with their lives?
Yeah, but I don't feel like that was well explored by them as students. They always didn't go there in a way that I think, if you look at kids in the real world, they're always talking, oh, when I'm older, I'm going to be a policeman, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. There was none of that really within it, and I don't know whether that was because the school suppressed it, or I don't know. It just seemed odd. That would be the thing that I would think they'd think of more.
Yeah, there was more of it, I think, when they're in the cottages, and they would all have these discussions around these lives, if they, these dream lives, but also around the older clone who'd gone off to live in this place they went to visit, and they're like, oh, let's go to his flat, because he's in a flat. Like, well, how's he got a flat on his own? Like, how is this possible? And then one of them goes, well, it's because he's a carer, and he can't talk about his work as a carer and all this kind of stuff. But they're these kind of, much like children in any school or any situation, have these like urban legend things about their lives or about things that go on, and they're kind of like trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And some things become very real to them even though they're not real because they've talked about them that much. I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, like you say, they've got they not. It's almost part of it maybe as well. They know there's no point in any of that because they know what they're made for and what their future is.
Yeah.
Very dark. I'm surprised it was rated higher than Remain Today. Me too. Me too. I really am. Most definitely. Glenda. Hi, Glenda. Didn't want to read the book because it claimed to be so sad. I read the first part because it was foreshadowing bullying. I like Gemma's take. Well, I don't know if it was foreshadowing bullying. There was bullying in it. I don't know if that's the main point of the book because by the end of it, these three characters who we spend quite a lot of time with, and there is like this pecking order bullying thing going on. Like Ruth as a character, we can talk about the individual characters in a sec, is just awful throughout the book for them. But then when you kind of, like any child who behaves in a certain way and you try and unpick why they're behaving in that way, I suppose the point of it was this, that she's this insecure thing as well, and she's trying to control what's going on around her. She was like a constant liar, wasn't she? She was constantly lying about her life and trying to make herself feel important, like she knew stuff the others didn't, like a fantasist basically. Hailsham was cruel. It gave them possibility of a life they cannot really achieve. I think that's why it got shut down as well, wasn't it? People didn't want it in the first place. And it got shut down in the end, didn't it? So, yes, I read it again. Yeah, big part. I read it again a few weeks later. Did enjoy it more the second time. Interesting. I might have to reread it at some point. I don't think the creators cared for the clones, which makes me wonder why I allowed them to experience a human experience. I was surprised none of the clones revolted. Were they incapable? Well, yeah, I think they probably were incapable. Actually, I feel like they're not being brought up with this idea of individual worth and like, I don't know, like I think if you're going to have a revolt, you've got to have a reason for a revolt.
I think as well that like the syllabus, for lack of a better word, they did at Hailsham, they weren't learning any history, they weren't learning any politics. They, you know, it was very, what's the word? Yeah, it was picked carefully, right? Cultivated, I suppose, to not really expose them to that as an idea. They didn't really expose to ideas like that. So
these ideas of individual like rights and futures and you know, you have to be aware of these things. Like, you know, they're not just necessarily these, like, you don't just naturally realize that these things are, you know, people debate them and discuss them and you teach about them, but they don't just suddenly know them. They don't feel these ways. So like they didn't know what they would be rebelling against, I suppose. You know, this is their life. Like they didn't question it.
And there's no network of like communication either, right? Because they had no parents, no siblings, no one else to talk to outside of their bubble. So even if they had wanted to revolt, or maybe other clone schools did revolt, you'd never hear about it because they're all so isolated.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they were also like kept away from each other, weren't they? Kind of thing, because there was this kind of this idea when they left, they didn't see certain people. They might pass them every now and again and go, "Oh, I saw so and so at a donation centre 10 years later or whatever." Yeah, it's really interesting. So much effort was spent on their creation and growth until they could become donors. They had more worth for the outside world than the teachers thought. Interesting. So yeah, they basically this. I think that was mainly in Hailsham, really. I think that was the whole idea. Like I think in the other schools they were probably just fed and clothed and raised. You know, I don't know. You know, kind of.
The Hailsham teachers did think they had value.
Yes, the Hailsham teachers.
But they were unable to convince the majority, right?
And you can see that there's thing that goes on where they're because of course we're seeing this all through what's her name's eyes. I'm trying to remember her name, the main character, and she's
Kathy.
This is the other thing. Memory is a big thing in Ishiguro's books. This idea of how reliable your memory is. So and so thought it this way, but I remember it this way. And memory is so unreliable. Like human memory is really unreliable. And and we're seeing it through her eyes. And so how reliable is any of it? And what's interesting though, much like when you read something like I don't know, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, or something where it's told from a fairly innocent perspective when they're watching something, and we, the reader, can see more into it than the character can. Yeah. And basically, this idea that she was looking at the teachers, and the teachers, you saw these arguments were going on between the teachers. Clearly, these were what they were having arguments. And Miss Lucy gets fired for telling them that, look, you're all going to be donating all your organs. You're all clones. Like she didn't tell them they were clones. She told them they're all going to be. That's what you're here for. That's all you're here for, basically. And she just outright tells them. And I think she gets fired, or she's no longer at the school after that. Mm. Someone from Norfolk. I love that reference. Oh yeah, Norfolk, where the lost things go. It's gone to Norfolk.
It's like England, yeah.
I can't remember why it was Norfolk, but it was this in-joke they had, wasn't it? Like if something got lost, it was like, oh, that'll be in Norfolk because the lost and found.
It was because it was like the little extra bit, wasn't it? Like it doesn't lead anywhere. There's no main through. Like it's just this little. Yeah.
It's like the lost and found. I love the reference that thought that Norfolk was where lost things are found. It is a sweet idea, yeah. And actually, that's where she finds her tape, isn't it? Because of course, the story "Never Let Me Go," the title, is based on this fake album, this song, this fake album, this fake singer that Ishiguro invents. If you go onto YouTube, you can listen to the song like someone's made it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's from the film. Maybe they put it. Maybe it was made for the film. But yeah, you can go and listen to it. But she loves this tape, and then the title of the song "Never Let Me Go" is now the title of the book. So, what do you think the significance of that is? So I think the whole idea of "Never Let Me Go," at the end, she says to the madam, doesn't she? Because madam sees her dancing and with her imaginary baby. Never let me go, and madam cries and runs off, and she thinks it's because madam saw her with her imaginary baby and she can't have babies because they're all infertile, and it's not that at all. Madam says, I think she's like as if she was singing to the world, never let me go, as if like the world's letting them all go and not really taking care of them or something. Yeah, so it's an interesting idea. And also I think at the end of their time together, I think she says something about letting them go when she doesn't see them for 10 years. But yeah, the fact they find the tape in Norfolk when they were like, this is the place where the lost things are, and then they find the tape there. Ruth, yeah. Let's talk about these characters actually. So main character, I forgot her name, let me get her name up. Main character, Kathy, that's her name. So Kathy's the narrator.
Yes.
Did you like her as a narrator?
No. I thought she was boring. Like, I just thought she was really dull. I would have really preferred to have it narrated by Ruth.
Yeah, that would be interesting, actually.
I think Ruth was a really interesting character with a lot of shades of grey. And she wasn't nice, but I just think it would have been really interesting to read it from her perspective because she was also the one donating first. To see her perspective of that, and also how she really viewed Tommy and Ruth's relationship, because Ruth always sort of put it out as almost quite innocuous. They were just friends and like they just got on well. But was it really that, or was there more?
You mean Kathy? Tommy, like the
Kathy.
Because Ruth keeps them apart, doesn't she? She tells Kathy, look, you know, he's not interested in you sexually because you slept with all these people. So, and actually she was lying about it, so she feels bad about that later on in life. But she's an interesting one because they stay friends for their entire time throughout Hailsham, don't they?
Yeah.
Even though they're kind of like frenemies.
Yes.
Like a perfect, almost case of frenemies. Kathy seems to have this kind of moral compass that I wouldn't necessarily, maybe you wouldn't expect necessarily, because when Tommy's being bullied in the very beginning, she talks about like Tommy and how he used to have these fits of temper, and then the other children would tease him to make him get angry and explode into his temper, which is, just classic, really. That happens so much. And she sees it and she feels sorry for him, and she tries to communicate to him, well, maybe you shouldn't get so, if you didn't get so upset, they wouldn't do it, kind of thing. And she's like trying to reason with Tommy and trying to get him to see why they're doing it, and then also trying to get the others to not be quite as mean to him, which I thought was quite interesting. And then he kind of settles down and becomes this like really popular like character.
Yeah, but after Kathy sort of helps him, right? She talks to him and she like gives him an out for his frustrations to a degree.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, and Ruth is, and then him and like Tommy and Ruth get together. They become a couple. And all of the weird things around sex and being couples and stuff, it was a bit odd. I thought, not odd, but like it was like, obviously because they're not normal teenagers and they're not been raised to be, but they've been told, like, they're quite openly told, look, sex is, enjoyable for both of you, but you're not going to have children. Just don't get any STDs because you're a donor. And that's what they're told, really, isn't it? They're like, yeah, you can't get any STDs, but so sex is kind of viewed as just this functional thing. They don't really make a big deal out of it, but then they do make a big deal out of it because they're always going on about who's actually doing it and who's doing it with who. It's this whole teenage part of the book, which is a bit weird. But they do eventually get together, don't they, Ruth and Tommy? And which I was quite pleased about. Not Ruth and Tommy, Kathy and Tommy. Which I was quite pleased about in the end, mainly for Tommy's sake, because I feel like he really, really loved Kathy. I think he had a lot of feelings for her anyway. He's like, he was constantly looking out for her, and he valued her opinion, and he shared his early art experiments with her, and he found the tape for her. All of those things, which kind of hinted his deeper feelings, I thought. So I was quite pleased.
I think it was too late though. By the time they actually got together, I think obviously he was already like 2 donations down or whatever. But even when he was trying to show her like his artwork, and then at the end they agreed that like he wouldn't really do that anymore, and like it just felt like it was too late really for them to have a meaningful relationship by the time it actually happened, which was quite sad.
Yeah, and I think Ruth, because she was dying and she knew that she kept them apart, so she wanted to make up for that, didn't she? She was obsessed with them getting what's the word? Deferred. Yeah. My rating. I mean, I don't generally rate books, but if I was going to rate it, it's in the 4-star category, a bit higher, 4.25, I think, something like that. So I would just above a 4, just above for me. Let's see. Interesting that some had the tendency towards bullying. How did they pick that up? I think watch it in schools. I watch it quite a lot. So like, with like very young children, and it's not necessarily that there's an intention to be cruel. Sometimes it's a case of, I want that thing and that person has it, I'm going to get it. Or I want, it's not, I think it's just human nature to dominate, like be a bit dominant.
To create a hierarchy almost.
Yeah, you see it in, like I always say, like playgrounds in schools are like a micro universe in micro, basically, and you just watch these like groups and power struggles going on. And I think it's also natural to want to be in a group and to want to be accepted, and therefore sometimes that means some people are not, and so that naturally kind of that happens within schools and with groups. Because I think this is the end. Like, they're not raised in families as regular children are, but they are. This is the thing, they are still children. They're not androids, I suppose, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Like in the book, the teachers, the way they kind of like, some of them find them really repulsive, don't they? Not the teachers, but like Madam, when she walks past them, she's like as if they're not real, You know, she finds them, she's creeped out by them. That's what they feel like. She's scared of them at certain points. And other people are as well. Like you imagine wider society, but that's how they kind of justify treating them in this horrific way, that they're not human, you know. But they are, you know, they're biologically they are human, therefore, and they have feelings, and they have emotions. So I love that Kathy was able to find a tape in Norfolk. Me too. Ishiguro studied at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, so maybe that's why he was so fond of Norfolk. I love that too.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Fact, Kirsty.
Good fact. Thank you, Kirsty, for that. Haha, Gemma. I mean, Gemma says a lot of haha things. I'm not sure what that one's about, but the description of Chroma was really accurate, so Ishiguro must have been there to visit. Yes, and it sounds like he has been to Chroma. Kathy seemed the most reliable of the three and maybe saw more than the others, but that is because we're seeing it from her perspective, don't forget. So I do, you know, wonder about
Okay,
that.
so controversial thought, right? If it had been Ruth narrating, would Kathy have been an interesting enough character to even talk about?
I think you're probably right.
The only interesting fact about her was that she was the narrator.
I think you might well be right, because she was quite a quiet. I mean, in terms of her like interacting with the others and the things that she did, I mean, Ruth was just like spinning these stories, you know, like manipulating people left, right, and centre. What was Kathy doing? Just watching it all.
Yeah. If Ruth was right, she's like, oh yeah, Kathy was there that day, and then all this stuff happened, and then that'd be it.
Hot take. She did seem to be a little bit more, I don't know, she was very observant, wasn't she? So I suppose that the fact that she probably sat back quite a lot and watched and didn't really contribute a lot meant that she could observe quite a lot as well, maybe. So you might well be right there, Kirsty. Kat agrees. Wanted Kathy and Tommy to be together. It was sad when Madam told there was no such thing as deferment, all that wasted time prior to this point. That was sad. That is a sad moment.
But though, isn't that true for everybody? Like, you know, everyone has a finite amount of time.
Yes!
A lot of people waste time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't find like the true happiness until their 80s or their 70s, and they're like, what the fuck have I been doing at 70?
Because this is a really interesting take on it, because actually, ultimately, in this book, we're looking at these characters and like, oh my god, they're going to die. They're going to die, and it's like, we're all going to die. We just don't accept it. They have to eventually accept it. It's going to come to them sooner and not in a natural way, really. But they know how it's going to happen. They're just going to have donations and donations until they can't anymore, until they've died. And they're not going to have a full life, because, you know, they're what are they, in their 30s or the late 20s when they start.
What is a full life? What is that? What does that look like?
I mean, they don't have the full life expectation of 80 years old.
But what does someone do in their lifetime of 80 years that you don't do in 30 years?
But what I mean, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. All I'm saying is just in terms of longevity, they don't have that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that they don't. But none of us know that. None of us know that. So what the ultimate point in there is, you've hit the nail on the head, is this, well, you know, they know they're going to die, but they've accepted that. They know that. Like, a lot of us don't really understand or take that concept on board, and therefore, like you say, get to this point where wasted time, you should have done this then. Realize actually there is no such thing as tomorrow, I'll write that book or I'll do this thing, because this is the time you got. The today is the time you got. So yeah, deep, Gemma, deep. Definitely would have interesting point of views for all three characters. Yeah, I like that. Maybe you know, if Ishiguro was Suzanne Collins, he'd be writing that next book. Sunrise on the Reaping or whatever. What is it? She's writing all these Hunger Games character stories. You get all this background.
You say that, but I literally just read the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, which is the one about snow. It was awful.
Yeah, I'm not interested in those books.
Hands down awful. Well, everyone was talking about Hunger on the Reaping, and I was like, oh, well, if it's good, then I'll read the first prequel, right? It was absolute trailer trash.
Yeah, I didn't hear any really brilliant things about that one. And then when she's bringing out this other one, everyone's like, oh. I suppose the second one's a bit more about Haymitch, so it's about a character that's a bit more interesting for me than Snow.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, The Hunger Games for me, I think it's because I was, I don't know, I was too old when it came out. I loved reading books. I really enjoyed them. I read them in my 20s or whatever it came out, late 20s. But, yeah, read it, enjoyed it. It's quite painful. There's like whole book, like Hunger Games stands, aren't there? Like people who love it. It's like Harry Potter levels of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, it's like, Good. Okay, so talk about characters, talk about the themes in the book, and in terms of the film, are you going to watch the film?
Yes, I am, and I think I'll like it more.
You might, because I feel like the books. I think there's some narration, like voiceover narration in the film, but I think it's shorter, and therefore also you're not going to have all that introspective, the stuff that you don't like, basically.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it would be more linear as well. I found, particularly in the first section, I found it quite irritating how she'd be like, oh yeah, and this happened, and then but after that, but before this happened, and then before that, but after this, and I was like, oh no.
There was a lot of jumping back and forth in the structure, wasn't there? So because you can see she's looking back on her life as she's about to start her donations, isn't she? So she's trying to remember it, and she says, "I remember it this way. Tommy said it was like this, and blah 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 said it was like that." And that I like that, find that interesting. But then it wasn't linear. It was just like you say, it was jumping back and forth a little bit throughout that. But yeah, I definitely think the film will be a good watch, and it's got a really great cast. So I'm really going to watch that at some point, maybe coming up soon. I found young Tommy annoying, but I did find he changed the most of the character. Yeah, did Kathy really change as a character? Tommy did. Ruth did. Is that why she's quite boring? Does she actually have a narrative arc? Does she change? I don't know.
I don't think she does.
I don't think she does either. Which main character syndrome? A lot of main character syndrome. Like the main characters being boring in books. Have you heard of this kind of like theory about the main characters in books are often the most boring ones? But yeah, she doesn't really have as much of an arc as the other two at all, really.
No.
No, not at all. But I definitely, if you like this kind of dystopian thing, I just like these alternate history ideas, because at the very end it was this idea that after the Second World War, cloning, like the push for in science was towards a biological science and cloning and medicine and stuff like that, and I think that was the idea he was playing around with, like what would that look like. Yes, I do like these things. So that was Never Let Me Go. I don't know if you have anything else to add about it.
No, I was trying to think about what book I would recommend to someone who had my opinion on Never Let Me Go. And I read a book last year called Hum by Helen Phillips.
Oh yes.
Which is it's dystopian, but sort of near future as opposed to near past. Again, about like robots and well, this is not about robots, but about artificial intelligence and that sort of thing. And I much preferred that to this, even though that was still quite quiet and introspective. I just didn't find it boring.
Yeah. The other thing is like it's this whole idea of what makes us human and thinking about AI and stuff. It does make me want to read Clara and the Sun, because
I do have it.
That's supposed to be very good, and that's about AI, isn't it?
AI, yeah.
And I think the other book that I want to read, which tackles topics like I suppose about this, is that Under the Eye of the Big Bird. Is that the one that was?
I loved that.
Yeah. So, and that's about people who are born using animal cells in the future when it's difficult to. Isn't that what it's about?
Yes and no. So it's almost told like short stories. So you go down lots of different avenues of what humanity could look like in the future, but actually a lot of it just rolls back to what humanity have been doing for centuries and centuries and centuries. It's really interesting how it ties like the past and the future together. But it's really, really interesting book to read. I would recommend.
Yeah, no, I've got it on the. I downloaded it because it was like 99p one day on Kindle.
Yes.
And yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to give that a go. Kirsty, 4 stars for me too. Passing my copy of the book on now. I've read it twice. I'm pleased to finally read it thanks to FOMO. I'm glad you read it too. But I am too, because it's been one that I've been meaning to get to for such a long time, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed thinking about it. I've definitely enjoyed talking about it. I think it's a really good book to discuss. It is a good
book to discuss for sure.
Yeah. And if you did like it and you haven't read The Remains of the Day, I recommend. If you really enjoyed Never Let Me Go, The Remains of the Day is my favourite Ishiguro that I've read so far. I've only read 2 though, to be fair. Do you know who's got great videos on Ishiguro's books? Katie from Books and Things.
Has she?
She's a big fan, and she's read all of them. And she had a video a few years ago, or like a year or 2 ago, on each of his books, and I think she ranks them. But yeah, she really likes his books. Our current book, we're in July and August.
Yes.
It's up there on my to be read shelf, but I can't see it. Maybe
I can't see mine. It's over there somewhere.
Okay. July and August is A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mystery, which is another book. Yay, look, you've got it. Another book that I've been desperate to read, because it's so many people love this book. I think I first heard about it. Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot loves this book. Loves it. And I
Sandy read it and loved it, I think. Last year or the year before.
Yeah, and it's very sad book from what I'm told, and it's historical fiction, and it is set around real events in India. From what I know, that's all I know about it. I don't really want to know much more about it. I just want to go into it.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah, it's got enough accolades, and it's got enough people that I respect liking it to know that this is something I want to read. I don't need to know any more about it. I just want to go into it. It is a big book though. It's a chunker. It's our biggest book this year, I think.
It is, yeah.
Or was that Cloud Cuckoo last year? Wait, was it Cloud Cuckoo Land?
Yeah, that was this 610. So this is longer than Cloud Cuckoo Land, I think.
Yeah, and a bit denser, I think.
A lot denser, yeah.
Yeah, and also I feel like it's but I do feel like it's a page turner from what I've been told. It's not, whilst it's a big book and it's a chunk of it, it's like it's a real page turner from what I've heard of it. And if you aren't already on the FOMO Book Club story graph,
yes,
I will. Yeah, I think I can get that up for everyone to show people while we finish off these last few comments. But we've now got a discussion group on Storygraph for the FOMO Book Club, and you can go if you are a member of Storygraph. Someone's asked me if you have to have an iPhone to be on Storygraph, and I think they only have an iPhone app. They don't have an Android app, but you can go onto the Storygraph on your laptop.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm sure someone said to me, I can only get that Storygraph on. I haven't got an iPhone, so I can't get it. And I was like, really? I thought it was quite yeah. Have you got an Android or an iPhone?
iPhone.
Yeah, but you can, if that is true, Storygraph, thestorygraph.com is their website, and you can join it on there. And I'm just going to share the picture so people can see it. And I've got the link in the show notes, the whatever they call it, description box here for our Storygraph book group. So what happens is there is a general discussion where you can introduce yourself, but each book has a read along, which is set for the 2 months that we'll be reading the book. And then we will post, when we finally organise the live show, we post the show like URL into the meeting, so you can add thoughts. I'm supposed to get notifications for it, though I went on and someone had left a comment and I didn't see the notification, so
Really?
I'm going to try and check it regularly. The story graph. So I'm going to see if I can share it to show people the FOMO book club story graph. But yeah, it's very good. Oh, they're verifying that I'm human. Oh, all these AI stuff. Verifying that I'm not a clone. Storygraph.com. Yeah, it's quite a slow website, I find sometimes. But it's I really like the story graph for the fact that it's one of the things that I do go on quite regularly. So that's why you're more likely to get me to chat about books on there. But yeah, you can join it on there. If you have thoughts, questions, you can join the buddy read, the group read along, or whatever that it's called. You can join that, you can join the book club, and then we'll make announcements for things in there, as well as on our community posts. The problem with community posts though is people just don't see them. That's what I find.
Yeah.
This is why the story graph will probably be a better place. If you are still on the Discord server, I haven't been on there, but I will go over and put the link for the story graph group in the Discord server, and that will be my last visit to the Discord server, I think, probably. I'm rubbish for Discord, absolutely rubbish. The Jane Austen July read along is being hosted on Discord this year.
Oh, is it?
Oh, Discord. So, Kat says, another good choice for the FOMO book club. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks. Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, Eragon was our last one, and it's the only one that I've not enjoyed. And the only reason I didn't enjoy it was because I had to force myself to read it. Because I feel like, if I hadn't had to force myself to read it. But anyway, check out more from Ishiguro. Absolutely. Go and see Katie's video for a little rundown of his books. Thanks for another great FOMO. Look forward to the next. Yes, a fine balance, I think, is going to be, if we were going to look at the books of the year that I'm anticipating being the top ones out of the FOMO book club, that and Cloud Cuckoo Land were the ones that I was like, these are going to be
100%
big books. A fine balance, another sad book. I'm so sorry. Yes, it is another sad book.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed your trip, Glenda. Apparently it's brilliant. It's a brilliant book. But yes, I think it is Gemma Levels of Misery. Yeah, I think it is. We will be primarily using Storygraph and no longer using Discord. This is purely because we are both really rubbish at Discord. I cannot get on with it. Alice was so good at it and keeping up with the group and chatting to people, and I've tried. I just can't. Remember to go on there. And also when I'm on there, I'm like, I just don't understand it. My brain won't let me understand it. Kind of like when I was trying to do algebra at secondary school, which I completely understand now, it's fine. But when I was like, I can't, it's not going in.
Exactly.
I hate Discord. Yeah, it just makes no sense to me. Like the comments and and notifications. It tells you there's a notification, but you click on it and you have to scroll to get to the latest comments. Like, why can't I just see from the notification?
Why doesn't it work like WhatsApp? Like that would be a lot.
Yes, that would make sense, because that would make sense. Clearly, I think maybe it's, I like to think it's a young person's thing and I'm too old for it, or it's just bad. One of the other. Okay, so FOMO, we'll be discussing a fine balance, probably end of August, beginning of September. That's probably be the first week in September, more than likely. And yeah, it'll be over on Gemma's channel. Hey! But if you want to join our Storygraph, the link is in the description box below. If anyone has any further questions or comments, stick them there. And otherwise, we are just going to toddle off, I think. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion.
I did.
Totally understand. If I can create a Storygraph account, I currently don't have it. Yeah, I'll tell you what I like about Storygraph, because I moved off of Goodreads. I still have a Goodreads account because I think you still need to. I do like to post if I do a review for a children's author or something on Goodreads. But Storygraph is totally independent. They don't, and it's not run by like Amazon, which is what Goodreads is. It's independent and it is free. There is a paid version, but you don't have to have that version to access the majority of the features on Storygraph. And I just think it's a lot more community focused and a lot less about trying to sell you things than a lot of the other things out there. Plus, it makes really pretty graphics.
I love the graphic.
Yeah, if you track your reading in it, the graphics are lovely. It gives you some nice stats, very pretty pie charts. It's all very nice. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in September for a fine balance, but we can chat on the Storygraph Book Club chat.
Yes, excellent.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.